Number 10. The oldest cheese ever discovered. Researchers uncovered traces of cheese inside ancient Egyptian tombs, dating back 3,200 years. Older than most world religions, most living languages, and certainly older than anything sitting in your refrigerator right now. Somebody thousands of years ago looked at thick, curdled milk and instead of tossing it away, decided to eat it, and then preserve it in their tomb for the afterlife, because apparently the journey to the next world requires a snack. The cheese was discovered in a shattered clay jar buried alongside an ancient official named Thomas. Scientists confirmed its identity by analyzing leftover proteins. It was made from a combination of cow's milk and either sheep or goat's milk. Even in antiquity, people were already experimenting with blended dairy. But the cheese also tested positive for a bacterium called Brucella melitensis, the cause of brucellosis, a disease marked by prolonged fever, joint pain, and night sweats that can drag on for years. So the oldest cheese in recorded history was also potentially lethal. Humanity has always been willing to gamble with its health for something that tastes good. 1,213 characters, number 9. The oldest lullaby was a threat. Scientists translated a 4,000-year-old clay tablet from ancient Babylon, and it turned out to be a lullaby, the oldest one ever identified. You might imagine something tender, something about stars and drifting clouds. The song is actually about a monster that specifically targets noisy children. Sleep now, or the creature will find you. Ancient Babylonian parents invented history's most ruthless bedtime strategy. No soothing music, no gentle rocking, just a clay tablet and a predator with an appetite for restless infants. The tablet even carries a warning etched at the bottom. A baby who won't stop crying is personally disturbing the household god. So the child isn't just exhausting the parents, the child is offending a deity. And this exact structure, the lurking creature, the supernatural warning, the implied consequence, appears in lullabies from cultures that never had any contact with Babylon. Even the English nursery rhyme, Rock-a-Bye Baby, ends with the infant crashing from a tree. The most terrifying bedtime tradition in history didn't originate with one civilization. It began with sleep-deprived parents across the globe independently reaching the same conclusion. Threaten the child. Carve it into stone, if necessary. Whatever it takes to get some rest. 1,300 characters. Number 8. Pompeii's glass brain. In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted and entombed the entire city of Pompeii beneath a crushing wave of volcanic ash and superheated gas. When archaeologists excavated the ruins centuries later, they made a discovery inside one victim's skull that nobody anticipated. Glass. Actual glass, sitting where a human brain had once been. The eruption generated heat so extreme, around 520 degrees Celsius, that this person's brain tissue didn't simply combust, it melted. And it then cooled so rapidly that it solidified into smooth, black, glassy fragments. Scientists call this process vitrification. It's the same phenomenon that occurs when lightning blasts sand and creates glass tubes. Except in this case, it happened inside a person's head. When researchers examined those fragments under a microscope, they found something astonishing. Neurons. Actual ancient brain cells, preserved in perfect condition inside the glass, like insects frozen in amber, only considerably more unsettling. The victim was found lying on a wooden bed in a building known as the College of the Augustales. Scientists believe he was likely a caretaker, probably asleep when the eruption struck. This marks the first time researchers have observed preserved human brain cells from the ancient world. We don't know his name. We don't know his final thoughts. But because of a rare collision of extreme heat and immediate cooling, a fragment of him endured. 1,434 characters, number 7. We almost went extinct 900,000 years ago. Around 900,000 years ago, the entire human species came within a breath of vanishing from the planet. Not close in a casual sense. Close as in our total breeding population collapsed to roughly 1,280 individuals. That's fewer people than you'd find in many secondary schools. Scientists arrived at this figure by examining DNA from people alive today, essentially reverse engineering our genetics the way you might reconstruct a recipe by tasting the finished dish. At a certain point, genetic diversity in the human lineage pinched down to almost nothing, like a 6-lane motorway suddenly narrowing to a single track. A solitary Amazon distribution center employs more people today than existed as breeding humans across the entire planet at that moment. This bottleneck persisted for approximately 117,000 years, a duration longer than the entire existence of modern Homo sapiens as a species. The cause remains unknown. A catastrophic climate shift is one possibility. A supervolcanic eruption is another. Or perhaps simply a devastating, sustained streak of terrible luck. But every single person alive on Earth today descended from that tiny, frightened cluster of survivors. Every ancestor in your family tree, stretching back through all of recorded history, ultimately traces to fewer than 1,300 people somewhere on this planet, just trying to outlast another day. Had even a small number of them surrendered, you would not exist. 1,445 characters, number 6, a story from 5,700-year-old gum. In Denmark, archaeologists unearthed a piece of ancient chewing gum, not anything like modern confectionery. It was a compact lump of birch pitch, tree resin that prehistoric people heated until pliable and then chewed. Nature's equivalent of bubble gum, except it tasted like a bonfire and almost certainly smelled worse. Scientists extracted a complete genetic profile from that tiny wad of chewed tree sap. They determined the gender. It was a woman. She had dark skin, dark hair, and blue eyes. Researchers named her Lola, an identity reconstructed entirely from something she spat out 5,700 years ago. They also recovered her full oral microbiome, every species of bacteria that had been living in her mouth at the time. Among the findings, bacterial markers linked to gum disease, meaning Lola suffered from periodontal problems. They also detected DNA from the Epstein-Barr virus, the pathogen responsible for glandular fever. They even identified what she had eaten shortly before chewing the gum: duck meat and hazelnuts. No bones were found, no tools, no shelter, no garments. What they found was rubbish, a piece of discarded gum. And from that single scrap of prehistoric trash, science reconstructed her appearance, her health, her last meal, and her complete genetic code. 1,293 characters. Number 5. A 3,000-year-old crime scene scientists recently resolved a murder case. The victim was a pharaoh. The crime took place 3,000 years ago. Ramesses III was among the most formidable rulers in Egyptian history. He led armies, raised temples, and commanded an empire. And someone killed him regardless. For a long time, exactly how he died remained unknown. The mummy existed, but linen wrappings were bound so tightly around the neck that no one could inspect what lay beneath. Then researchers scanned the mummy using CT imaging, and what they found was not ambiguous. His throat had been cut so severely the wound extended all the way to the cervical spine. Death would have been nearly instantaneous. Historians already had a suspect. Ancient Egyptian records known as the Harem Conspiracy Papyri documented a plot to assassinate Ramesses III. His own wife, Queen Tai, had organized it. She wanted her son Pentawere to inherit the throne instead of the designated heir. so she recruited palace administrators, military officials, and household staff. A conspiracy as calculated as any modern political thriller, except the target was the most powerful man in the ancient world. The Egyptians uncovered the plot and prosecuted the conspirators themselves. Pentawere was convicted and reportedly compelled to take his own life. His mummy was recovered, buried without proper funerary rites, shrouded in a goatskin. In ancient Egypt, the gravest possible posthumous insult. The ancient world solved the case. Modern science simply confirmed it with superior equipment. 1,544 characters, number 4. The oldest known surgery scientists discovered a skeleton inside a cave in Borneo, and it carried something entirely unexpected. One of the leg bones showed evidence of surgical amputation, not a fracture from trauma, not damage from an animal, but a deliberate, controlled removal performed by someone with clear anatomical knowledge. And it happened 31,000 years ago. Someone looked at another person in suffering and believed they could help. Then they set about doing exactly that. 1,439 characters, number 3. The Ice Age solar calendar. For a long time, scholars assumed the paintings in prehistoric caves were purely artistic, that early humans were, in essence, decorating their homes out of boredom or ritual impulse. Recent research suggests something far more deliberate was happening. The dots, dashes, and notch marks carved beside animal images are not decorative elements. They are a calendar system, one that is at least 20,000 years old. When researchers analyzed the patterns, they found that the dot sequences consistently corresponded to lunar months, specifically counting the months until the depicted animals would breed or migrate. A salmon drawn with 11 dots beside it signals that the salmon run begins in the 11th month. It is a notation system, a reminder scratched into stone that outlasted 20 millennia. These people were not simply enduring each day as it came. They were anticipating seasons, months in advance, recording ecological patterns, and planning for the future. They knew winter was approaching, and they were writing that knowledge down, or rather, chiseling it. These carvings appear across multiple cave sites in France, Spain, and Germany, all using the same consistent notation system. This was not one individual's invention. It was a shared intellectual framework, a technology that spread across thousands of miles before agriculture existed, before written language, before anything we conventionally associate with civilization. Humanity didn't invent the concept of tracking time. Someone simply forgot that it was already figured out 20,000 years ago in a cave. 1,588 characters. Number 2. The first bread came before farming. Scientists recovered burned bread fragments in Jordan. These crumbs are approximately 14,400 years old. That alone is extraordinary. But here is the remarkable part. Agriculture did not yet exist. The conventional narrative has always followed a tidy sequence. Humans developed farming, used those crops to produce flour, and eventually invented bread. It is a logical progression. It is also entirely wrong. Bread was being made thousands of years before anyone planted a single deliberate crop. Our ancestors were gathering wild cereal grasses from the ground, grinding them manually, mixing the resulting powder with water, and cooking the paste on hot, flat stones. With no agricultural system, no cultivated fields, no grain stores. They were doing it from curiosity, from hunger, from some early recognition that the result was worth the effort. The site where these crumbs were found is called Shubaika 1 in northeastern Jordan. The bakers were members of a culture called the Natufians, nomadic hunter-gatherers with no fixed settlements and no farming. Scientists now believe this discovery may actually explain why agriculture eventually developed. People acquired a taste for bread. Gathering enough wild grain to make it consistently was laborious and inefficient. So they began cultivating the plants themselves. Bread didn't emerge from farming. Farming emerged from the desire for bread. Humanity encountered a carbohydrate, decided it needed more of it, and constructed an entire civilizational system to ensure a steady supply. 1,550 characters. Number 1. The 476,000-year-old wooden structure. Scientists found 2 logs in Zambia that rewrote the established timeline of human intelligence. These logs had been deliberately shaped and joined together. Someone had cut precise notches into each one so they would interlock, like instructions from a manual that is 476,000 years old, except nobody has misplaced any of the components. For scale, our species, Homo sapiens, first appeared approximately 300,000 years ago. Whoever built this structure was not modern human. It was an earlier hominin relative, and they were already constructing engineered wooden platforms or shelters before we even existed. Every established assumption about the cognitive capacity of ancient hominins rested on the idea that they were reactive, instinct-driven, incapable of sustained forward planning. This structure demolishes that assumption entirely. To build it, someone had to identify suitable timber, select appropriate tools, visualize how 2 separate components would function together, and execute that vision with precision. That is not animal behavior. That is engineering. Researchers also recovered stone tools directly adjacent to the structure, suggesting this may have served as a workshop, a platform, or perhaps something as simple as an elevated surface to sit and observe from, because it appears even ancient hominins appreciated a good vantage point. The wood survived because it was buried in persistently damp conditions near a waterfall, which inhibited the usual decay. Discovering intact wood of this age is comparable to finding a fully preserved snowflake from the last ice age sitting undisturbed in your freezer. It defies probability, but it exists, and it means the story of human cognition begins far earlier than anyone previously believed. That's everything for today. More videos like this are coming. Subscribe to catch them.